Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this week's slightly belated Fake Accents Unite. I am joined, as always, by the Britisher. Good evening, sir.
Hello there. I am hanging on in there.
I'm also joined by Tailed Feature.
Hello.
And we may be joined by Sarah later on in the stream, but she'll be at least half an hour, from what I'm told. So just hold on for that. I do have some exciting news as we start. I have managed to wrangle my way into an association, if you will. What's the word that they use? Like an associate? Affiliate. I'm an affiliate with Amazon now. So if any of you want to try Audible or get Amazon Prime, there are links in the description which can get you 30 days free trials on that. And if you do that, it doesn't cost you anything extra, and it gives me a little bit of a bump as well. So there's that. But there we go. And don't call me a sellout, Tailed. Like at least have the decency to say it to my face, you know.
Okay, you're a sellout.
No, it's not that you're a sellout. You're just a Bezos minion.
Oh,
Kind of minion.
Did either of you see the South Park depiction of Jeff Bezos?
No.
Then,
given that I don't watch South Park, it would be a strange thing if I had.
Exactly.
It would be a little disturbing. Let me put up an image and then get immediately demonetized. Right, this right here is, if I share my screen accurately, just close that. Present to everyone, and there we go. That's Jeff Bezos. He's also entirely telepathic in the show, I think.
Yeah. So what you basically mean is he's an invader from Mars who just happens to basically have been sprayed sort of beigey pink.
Yeah, that's the general idea, and he's listening in on everyone's communications.
Surely that's Mark Zuckerberg.
Well, he's obviously monitoring everyone who is using Amazon Prime and everything as well. So there you go. And for some reason, the back of his head is that. I can't remember. I can't remember what he's based off of, but it's something very specific. I can't remember.
Could it be Mars Attacks?
It does look like Mars Attacks, yeah.
It's these guys by the looks.
Oh,
but I have no idea.
Yes, yep. See, I can see your thinking there. Yeah,
yeah, but I don't know. Oh, it's a Star Trek reference. There we go. Yeah. He was just a bit sick, really, in that one. How's things going on the day to day? Have you had anything interesting crop up in your week so far?
So you mean other than the kind of the Battle of Tucker?
The Battle of Tucker. Oh yes, because he's not. He just seems to be absolutely under assault all the time.
Well, media matters. You know, those sort of that little centrist organization.
I think has
decided to kind of put up some sort of choice things that he said on talk radio some 10 years ago.
He said something like women are inferior or something. What was it?
Primitive.
That was the word. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it was very much in the form of banter. You know, I mean, you can sort of, you know, you can see how this is being, you know, how shall we say, you get these individual lines and you sort of wonder, okay, and how many hours of conversation are they taken from exactly?
Yeah, how much context is missing here? From what I hear, they're getting him, they say he defended a convicted sex abuser and called women primitive in an unearthed recording. So
yes, but you know, I don't know the context of that radio program, but I get the impression that it was kind of a bit shock jockey, and
that would be Tucker's whole deal. Yeah,
one was intentionally being controversial, if you know what I mean.
Mm.
So that seemed to be, to me at least, just listening to the snippets, that seemed to be the sentiment of it. Now,
the thing that I got from this was you know, the guy he was talking to was called Bubba the Love Sponge. So I mean,
there you go. So
do I really have to take anything that's being said seriously?
So obviously his career has taken off since then, and he has moved into more serious territory.
Yeah.
And you know, you can't help but feel that he is kind of being tarred with what he basically needed to do in order to get going. Do you understand what I mean?
Well, I think this is just going to do him good, really, isn't it? Because he's not going to, you know, kowtow to these people, and he's going to raise his profile.
I mean, in all the newspapers, the way they're reporting it is refuses to apologize.
Well, of course.
And of course, the left have come back at him by saying that he ran a segment recently attacking stuff Joe Biden said in '75. Yeah. And then people going, 2 days later, who can be held responsible for stuff they said a decade ago? It's almost like there's a difference in position as well that comes with like the responsibility, and also like not to be dishonest, but just to like there's stuff that Joe Biden said when he was in a position of political influence, and there's stuff that Tucker Carlson said when he was a shock jockey on a radio show, which it's
what I recently said about the John Wayne thing, where I sort of said, well, look, John Wayne was an old man when he said those things, and he was an actor. If he were to have been a politician in office, I would have seen things differently. But John Wayne was an actor. And in the same way, yes, you're a shock jock on a radio program, or you're actually a high-ranking politician. There are differences.
Absolutely. Tim Cornish has chimed in early with a $10 donation, so thank you very much, Tim, saying the Cornish have minority status as of 2014. As a person of this heritage, and even though I am a colonial, I feel oppressed by the Britisher. Scots, Welsh, you feel me?
I feel oppressed specifically by the Britisher.
Yes, not by the British, just merely by the Britisher.
Yeah. So just to basically get this clear, we are talking about the Rolls-Royce Corniche, are we?
This is exactly what we're talking about. You know, it's just a complete erasure of culture by, you know, this imperialist car manufacturer.
Obviously, it's just affecting our lives on a daily basis ever since its inception. But yes, now we have like the minority war going on in chat with Mr. Sparkle saying, as a Welshman, we were the first.
Well, you know, all I can say is, you know, once people start thinking about the United Kingdom and the entire idea of Britishness properly, they very quickly become convinced and come round to my side. I mean, just look at Count Dankula, once and fervent independent supporter, now a member of UKIP. I rest my case.
He still is an independent supporter, interestingly.
Yes, Andy said it during his speech at the UKIP conference.
And they were not happy. They didn't know how to deal with him.
And I was in the front row going, yeah.
That's very you, like the only person cheering in a crowd.
Well, yes. One day I will have to make a video, you know, to gain yet further popularity. By criticizing the entire concept of Scottish independence.
I feel like, Britisher, that you should, like, in order to gain popularity, you should run a series of travel vlogs where you travel to different cities at different times, but you record them at the time, and then you upload them later, and everyone will be infuriated by knowing where you've been, but not who you are, and never being able to catch you.
And of course, you know, if at the same time I'm also rather critical about the location.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter what the location is.
Yeah, do a Michael Portillo and just jump on trains and go around the place.
There is that, yes.
As if the Britisher lives within a 10-mile radius of any train. I mean, really.
Oh, he has his own train.
the Britisher train.
You know me so well.
Like a private train, but no tracks to run it on.
I mean, you know, where do you think, you know, the entire Harry Potter idea came about?
Oh, I see. Yes, you have a flying car as well, and you also deliver messages by owl.
Well, I mean, the flying car, that's just the futuristic technologies that are being developed here.
I mean, you've had these technologies for years. You're like some kind of steampunk Jesus.
Well, I mean, given that I'm the one who, according to you, designed the pyramids, I mean, I would assume that I'm somewhat ahead of the curve. Yes.
I'm still recording your memoirs. You realize you talk in your sleep, like when you're on your shelf.
Well, that must be it then. Yes.
Exactly, right. So either you have a very vivid imagination, or you really were building the pyramids. And let me put it this way:
well, advocating. Again, I mean, given that I was the one building the pyramids, I should more than likely be affecting a strangely Scottish-sounding Spanish accent and speaking to someone in a kilt with a French accent.
Your kind of like pre-abolition of slavery views are not very palatable, by the way, Britisher. You need to get a handle on yourself. That side of you does come out at night.
Oh, that's no longer acceptable, is it?
No, it's not. I'm not going to criticize you for your old comments, but I'm just saying it's not acceptable today, Britisher.
Can someone Photoshop the Britisher with a steampunk pith?
That would be amazing. The steampunk Britisher would be like just a full avatar. Do you know what? Like with the cogs and everything on the uniform. I would love that.
Cogs around the monocle.
Yeah, I would absolutely adore that. Let me see what we got here. Jared Uren has donated 10 Aussie dollars, which are like
be very careful how you pronounce that name.
I know, right? Which are like dollars, but kind of penal colony. It's like monopoly money, right? And says, can't wait for in 20 years when NSO is brought down by his unseemly association with the infamous rapper Sly Sneak. Well, oh yes, because he started producing rap videos again, didn't he? He did some sort of Sneak's gonna give it to you parody of X gonna give it to you the other day to attack based Liz. I think he's going mad.
Okay, so I mean, in that regard, you're somewhat ahead of me because I wouldn't even know that it was a parody of something.
Well, of course not, because I wouldn't expect you to know what music is, Britisher.
Oh, I mean, I it wasn't as if I wasn't around when Wolfgang Amadeus was composing.
You still got all your favourites on wax cylinder.
Oh God, that was a thing. He prefers to make his own music, does the Britisher? He hums. I'm just saying that. But
actually, the intro on my clips, the Britisher, the Rule Britannia music, is from an Edison cylinder.
I rest my case.
Yeah. I tell you what we need to do though. I think you should record. Like I'm giving you like all this kind of comedy gold here, Britisher. I think you should record like a barbershop quartet of your own voice, like just singing something, just anything like that.
Fine, I'll help. I'll help to edit that one.
Yeah, we can make that happen. You could even write write the lyrics for him, Teld, just to make it extra Britishy.
Yeah. Did you see that?
I can see the word Stramash and Sassenach appearing again and again and again. Yes,
potentially.
You wouldn't do that, would you, Towers?
No, of course not. Of course not.
Of course not. You're perfectly respectful.
Yeah. Did you see that? I did a video a week or so ago with Discordia, and I used
the gender ideologues one, yeah.
Yes, and I included a 12-second clip of "God Save the Queen," the Elgar version of it, and even though I'd completely made it all distorted and changed pitch and everything for comedic purposes, I still got the entire video demonetized because of that clip.
Oh, for goodness sake!
Yeah,
that sucks, man. I'm sorry to hear that. Did this go?
I'm actually fighting it, so I could just lose my entire channel.
I mean, you have you've parodied the song. So it should all be fair use.
They like to kind of threaten you with community strikes and whatever, don't they?
You mentioned demonetization in the presence of the Britisher.
If you question if you question a sort of a copyright claim.
Was that a question or was that
a statement or a question?
Well, sort of half and half. I'm kind of, I'm wondering whether is that what you got when you basically, appealed the claim.
Well, when I appealed it, it said because I'm appealing a copyright thing, It basically said that if I lose, I could lose my entire channel.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. Yeah.
Yes.
Delightful.
Yeah.
The horrible thing with copyright claims as well is they go to the person who lodged the claim or the person responsible for the claim if it's an auto strike.
Do you actually think that the one who has the claim is the person who actually owns the copyright?
Yeah, so in this case, it's Warner Brothers who've claimed it.
Okay, so it does sound like someone credible in that case. Okay.
Yeah,
you know, sometimes you get copyright claims from someone based in Vietnam.
Yeah. But because you get in this instance, it's that particular recording because the music itself is outside of copyright.
Yeah.
But this particular recording is copyrighted. So I could have done my own version of it, and it would been fine.
On the bagpipes.
On the bagpipes, of course. Yep, that would have triggered a few people. But yeah, it's a bit of nonsense, really, that because it's a 12-minute video or thereabout. In fact, it's longer than that. It's about 19 minutes, and yeah, because of 12 seconds, they get all the ad revenue.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's rubbish.
Yeah, I mean, if they just said, "Look, we're not putting any adverts on it," I'd have probably been, well, I wouldn't have exactly been chuffed, but I would have kind of expected that anyway, considering the content in the video. You know, but if they're saying, "Yeah, we're going to make money off of 12 seconds that are in this video," well, I'm afraid my Scottish blood just would not take that.
Yeah,
I need that money.
You may have noticed that the title of this particular stream, which says
it's a bit spicy.
Shamima's Brexit Baby Edition. And of course, this has been what's going through the news recently because Shamima Begum's baby has died. If you don't know who Shamima Begum's baby is, or Shamima Begum is, she's the ISIS bride who's had her citizenship stripped, along with, I believe it's 3 others now. And of course, causing controversy because this now appears to only be happening to the women who leave. Who leave for ISIS in an attempt to come back, because there's something like 300 or something men who've already returned who were not stripped of their citizenship. So that's an interesting double standard, isn't it?
That's because you oppress the Wamens, of course.
Of course, but Sajid Javid, who orchestrated the original citizenship revocal or removal, revocal is definitely a word. Just run with it. Has been criticised as like responsible for the baby dying, basically, and basically, yeah. So he's
by Diana Abbott, no less.
No less, which was just quite bizarre from just in the terms of like Diana Abbott defending a terrorist and thinking that's a good thing to do. Although
really defending a terrorist, she was just basically accusing Sajid Javid of killing babies.
Yeah, that he was supposedly responsible for. Although I believe it amused. I feel like it emerged that they had offered to bring the baby back to the UK if she could get it to a consulate. She wouldn't be allowed, but the baby could come to her parents, and she said no. So there is. Well,
I think there was also something. I'm a bit hazy on this, but I believe repatriating her or the baby would have been a Foreign Office matter, whereas the immigration part, that's a Home Office matter. So that's why it was Jeremy Hunt, who I believe is the Foreign Secretary at the moment. He was the one who basically said that it was looked into, but it was not deemed safe for Foreign Office personnel to be going to that camp.
Right.
So, it seems as if things were investigated, but it isn't as if they kind of arrive with military, if you know what I mean. You would kind of send 2 or 3 diplomats, and that place is perhaps not as safe as some people might think. So that in a way is. That is in a way how the British government explains it, or should we say that they've got their excuse at the ready. Whether one wants to believe that or not, that's up to every single person. But that's what effectively the British government have said.
I mean, like I don't even the circumstances around the baby dying as well have been somewhat not spurious, just like undefined, like whether or not because it was clear that the camp was providing the baby with everything it needed, in terms of everything from milk, heat, blankets, shelter, and so on and so forth. You wonder whether or not it was just a case of cot death or something like that.
Well, you know, I would more look at it from the perspective that she's already lost 2 children before that. So it may be that her babies would need more intensive medical care, if you know what I mean.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know enough about, like, I guess not just baby care, just like the situation around there. I just don't know. Like, there's no one sitting there with a camera on her at all times.
Well, yes, I mean the whole thing. It's from what I've heard, it's not a refugee camp per se. It's a kind of internment camp.
Yeah.
And I saw. I think I've got it on my mobile, which of course is now in a completely different part of the house. I saw a Sun article where they were basically sort of reporting how, you know, several other ISIS brides have kind of let it be known how determined they are. So these are not necessarily quite as sort of, you know, as much shrinking violets as some people are making them out to be, if you know what I mean. When they're talking about, you know, fighting to the death and making sure that we will be wading through blood and so on.
Yeah. It's just so, like, it's a tough thing to think about, like, because obviously the baby was innocent, quote unquote.
Well, no, I mean, I don't think there's anything quote unquote about it. I mean, the child as such was completely innocent. And from, you know, from the perspective of nationalities, because obviously this is all, you know, the nationalities are disputed, it's difficult to see the child as anything other than British. So it does appear that, you know, you have effectively got an innocent British child that died somewhere in a camp, which, you know, where there more than likely would have been some sort of imperative to try and get the child back. But given that that would have entailed separating the child from its mother, you just wonder how practical that would have been, you know. Can one really you know, in all good conscience do that? At the second, you know, on the other hand, can you send 2 junior consular workers or whatever off to an internment camp somewhere in the wilderness of Syria and there try and separate a mother from her baby, you know, and hope to get out in one piece? So, you know, it appears that more than likely the practicalities were just in the way.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me, but
it's yeah. I mean, it's invariably this is not the most joyous subject to talk about. Yes, this is fairly grim. Yes.
You know how I always like to keep fake accents unite as grim, dark, and depressing as possible.
Yes, yeah. I mean, you've definitely succeeded this.
Just managed to do it this week. I love it. Tailed Feature is their, like, new parody song.
Well, yeah. So Booby said, "My Shamima." So,
oh my god,
yeah.
I was hearing my Shamima.
There you go. I'll make a medley.
Which of course is again another song that you're not allowed to sing these days because
Why?
You know, sexism, you know, violence against women.
Yeah.
Oh,
you know, that Tom
yet,
Jones, that evil misogynist.
And yet, was it Chicago? He ran into my knife, or whatever it was. Is still running.
Oh, it's completely different.
Of course, nothing like a fresh set of double standards in the morning. Dr. Martin Luther Pepe has said the North will rise. 789 will commence again. Fire, church, fire. Emojis. 789. Do you recognize this reference?
I'm struggling here at the moment.
I presume it might be 1789. That might be it. But I struggling to remember anything that happened in 1789. I mean, you were there, Britisher. What happened in
Viking invasion, perhaps?
Well, no, 1789 sounds more like sort of Jacobite rebellion territory, possibly.
No, it's too late.
Too late?
Yes, 1745 was the last one.
Oh, well, there you go.
1789 was more French Revolution.
Sarah's in the chat and she's saying, I was thinking Shamima Puddle Duck. Yes, I don't know whether you want to tar Beatrix Potter with like anything to do with this particular case. Salad Fork has donated $5 which again are like real dollars but not, saying, considering how Begum turned out, I doubt sending the baby to her parents would result in a functional Brit. I wonder what nationality the father was. Dutch, yeah. As I understand it, the parents are very upset about this happening in general, but and in no way really supported the move. Dr. Martin Luther Pepe is clarifying that it's Lindisfarne. Do you know Lindisfarne?
What, the place in
so
North
789 is when Lindisfarne was raided.
I have no idea.
Well, I thought
I'm going to thought that was much earlier.
Right, that's it. Jemima, get out of the way. We need to find out when Lindisfarne was raided.
Or
when did the Vikings attacked in?
Yeah, you could be in that territory. Yes, when I'm coming to think of it.
793. Of course, that well-known date everyone knows. June 793 was the darkest day for the monks of Lindisfarne, as the Viking invaders from Scandinavia landed on the shore and launched a stealthy attack on the church and its unsuspecting inhabitants. So there you go.
Yeah, it's those ruddy Scandinavians again, isn't it?
Yes.
Randy Scandies.
Randy Scandies. Ganja Blob Flanker says, by ancestry or magic dirt, the baby is not British. As I say, like, I don't know enough about how citizenship works, but also like the fact that she's a defector doesn't like plays a big role to me as well. Like,
well, but this is just it, you know, in order for her to be a defector, you would have to be able to recognize the ones she defected to. That's the problem.
But like the horrible thing about ignoring it in terms of like recognizing it as a legitimate state is like they exist and they have a significant amount of control, and they're not a legitimate state, but they are a legitimate entity in terms of they exist. Do you know what I mean?
I can see where you're coming from. I just don't think it will. I don't think it would stand up in court.
No, I think we're working under the old kind of along borderlines kind of worldview where our legal system is not caught up to recognize like international terrorist organizations as things you could defect to.
This was really the first time this ever happened, wasn't it?
Yeah. So it's setting a precedent just by how awkward and controversial it all is, I think. So it's like they're going to have to do something for when this happens again.
I think what galls most people in this whole exercise really is the staggering hypocrisy. So at one moment you have these people kind of, you know, bravely setting about burning their bridges until everything goes wrong.
Yep.
And then one is basically told that one has actually got the entitlement to cross this bridge that they themselves have burnt. Do you understand what I mean? And that's I think what you're looking at, and basically saying, well, look, you walked away. So if you walked away, why do you now suddenly want to be one of us again?
Interestingly, as people in chat are pointing out, this is the first time the media has cared, and again, it's because it's women. Presumably, because we've got a lot of like there's been moanings and there's been groanings like in some parts of like the alt media, for instance, about returning jihadis and stuff like that, and the Daily Mail occasionally makes the odd death like noise about it all, but nothing has captured the public attention and the media attention in the same way as this case. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, but I don't think it's. I can understand what you mean with women and there's a baby involved and things like that. But
Well,
I think it was more due to the fact that this was a notorious case. One knew of those 3 girls
because they left. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how much that was in the public consciousness, but
oh no, that was a big public story at the time.
I know it was, but big public stories don't necessarily sit well in the memory of the general public. Like, I know for a start that until it was mentioned that it was these 3 girls, although I'd known about the story, I didn't connect the two until it was mentioned. But this entire thing reminds me very much of the 200 Nigerian schoolgirls story. Do you know that one?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, where Boko Haram, I think it was,
that's the one,
took them. But do you know about what the events preceding that particular event?
Go on.
So this entire thing happened when they'd visited the school twice before, and the first time they went, they murdered all the teachers, and the second time they went, they murdered all the boys and all the teachers, and they left the girls. And each time that they saw the girls, they were like, "Go home, get married, and basically be good citizens and never study again." And then they weren't getting any traction with this, so they went through the local town, which was about 3,000 people, went door to door, murdered all the men, and then got to this school again. And this time we're like, screw it, we're going to steal these children, and took the women. And again, murdered all the boys that were there. So it was this kind of weird thing. But then, of course, the second that happened, and there was an international media outcry about our girls and 200 girls and so on and so forth. And there just seems to be this weird thing. I think not Lawrence Southern, there was someone I consider to be more impartial than that, picked it up and were like, basically, if you look at media portrayals of how, and maybe it was Cassie J, but if you look at media portrayals about male killings, basically about the killing of men, it's hardly ever highlighted, and it's typically referred to as people, whereas when it's women, it's much more heavily highlighted in the media, which is not to say that it shouldn't be highlighted. It's just that it's a really interesting phenomena that occurs with regards to these things. Yeah, Joshua Chandler saying it was on the red pill. Yeah, I knew it was something like that. And Bring Back Our Girls. Have you seen that film out of interest? Either of you?
No.
It's well worth a watch if you have the time.
I thought at the time that a big mistake was made with the whole furor of getting a global campaign, Hillary Clinton to be holding up some kind of banner, Bring Back Our Girls and those
Michelle Obama, yeah.
I think it was a massive miscalculation because, for months after that, the government was actually pushing back Boko Haram. And, many civilians who previously were under Boko Haram basically then kind of fell into the hands of the government, were liberated, so to speak. But Boko Haram went out of its way to make sure that those girls stayed on their side of the front line. And that is because they had basically been given a status, so to speak. So these were symbols that Boko Haram did not want to lose. And in that regard, I think the entire sort of global campaign completely backfired.
Really? Okay. That's an interesting perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I think otherwise they would have just been, girls that have been taken away, but might then kind of fall back into the hands of the government as Boko Haram was pushed back.
Yeah.
But because they had basically been given that special status, the girls, that kind of prize that Boko Haram had captured, Boko Haram was then determined to hang on to them.
Yeah, and we never got them back. By the way, they disappeared, and no one knows what happened to them.
I'm not sure. I think quite a few of them actually have since actually been recovered.
I mean, last I saw, there was very little movement. I mean, there might have been 10% might have come back.
No, I think it's beyond. No, I think since then there has been some other story. I might be misremembering, but I do believe that quite a lot of them were actually at some point then when Boko Haram effectively needed to run away and run out, run into the bushes, if you know what I mean. That's when they ran out of options. But
yes, they released 100. There you go. In 2018, in March. There you go.
So at least they didn't get slaughtered. You know, my worry was that Boko Haram would sooner butcher them all rather than let them fall into the hands of the government, if you know what I mean.
I think even
due to their kind of importance, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, although I think even Boko Haram recognized that if they'd butchered women on, and it had been found out about, that there was nowhere they could hide.
Well, the thing is, you know, no one would ever need to know. You could basically just kill them and, you know, dig a ditch somewhere and fill it in, and, you know, no one would ever know. And I think that was the much greater danger, rather than them kind of staging some kind of public massacre just out of spite.
It turns out they were selling them for £4 each to husbands, quote unquote. That's an interesting statistic. There we go. Well, good to clear that one up at least.
Bit light still.
Sorry?
Keeping it light still.
Oh, of course. The Harry Channel has donated $5 and says, "Is the baby considered a martyr? Being a tiny baby for all eternity, surrounded by his 72 virgins, sounds more like hell." I mean, that's ludicrous. I don't really know how to respond to that. Any comments from you guys?
Well, I mean, martyrdom these days in the Middle East is pretty cheap. I mean, you know, anybody who dies in anything these days is immediately always called a martyr. I mean, when it comes to the kind of religious mania that has taken up, you know, taken off over there, you know, anybody killed, you know, if you look at the Palestinians, anybody killed by the Israelis is a martyr. So you look at it like that, and in that regard, that question is not necessarily even that crazy, because you kind of do wonder, will they find some way of basically declaring this kid a martyr in their own minds?
It wouldn't surprise me. The pneumonia martyr, as I say. Boko Haram literally means the West is degenerate. I believe it's Western education is sin. There's still one girl being held, apparently, just to jump back.
Yeah, it's interesting how they reduce Western education down to Boko, isn't it?
Yeah. I have no idea. There's no such thing as Palestinians, says Up Yours in the chat.
Oh, here we go.
Maybe I should get Halsey on to chat about this, you know, Halsey English.
How many centuries have we got to talk this one through?
Dear. But there we go. I'd like to move on from our rather depressing topic to something arguably.
Oh dear God, please, yes.
From something arguably worse, which is obviously Brexit's negotiations are still in trouble. I've got this huge thing. I'm actually going to a talk with, or like a debate or something where there's Ian Duncan Smith there and so on and so forth. I think it's on the 25th, like in the run up to Brexit. But yeah, basically May is going to Strasbourg. She's gone to Strasbourg for last ditch talks at the moment. She's had some more pushback and a lot of people talking about another leadership challenge, because we need another one of those, don't we? So that's...
Are they legally able to do that, though?
I don't think so.
No, I don't think the Tory constitution allows it.
I don't know whether or not like it's a leadership challenge, an internal one, or like another vote of no confidence. But
they can have as many as them as they want, but you know, you kind of wonder what's the point.
Yeah, I understand that. But basically, she's gone straight across to speak with people like Jean-Claude Juncker. Let's hope he's not been drinking before she arrives. And
perhaps
talking about...
she is the one who's driving him to drink. Have you ever considered that one?
Can you imagine? But she's been driving him for a lot longer than she's been in office. But there's this thing basically to try and clear the non-issue of the backstop, and talking about ambitions for a free trade agreement. And I don't know, she's making more noises as usual about how if if we have Brexit, then it's a bad thing. If we have Brexit and it's no deal, then it's a bad thing, and therefore we might not even have Brexit, which I thought was quite spectacular this late into the game to say. Obviously, she's got to have her final vote, I think, like in the next few days.
She's not going to have an announcement at 10 o'clock.
Maybe. I don't know. I've not seen anything about that, but then I've been out all day. So do we know if there's going to be something going on?
I believe so.
Justin Susan of Icare to go full nuclear on Brexit. In what way? I don't know. I was chatting to him about it yesterday. It didn't seem that particular nuclear. Yeah, what can be said about Brexit that has not already been said? It's going round and round. I agree. At this point, it's just a question of what's going to happen exactly on the 29th of March.
It's going to be delayed.
And Britisher believes it's going to be delayed. I think that we will enter an indefinite holding period because negotiations have not succeeded. Although someone has just linked me something, a Telegraph poll, suggesting that the largest proportion of the electorate, i.e. 40...
Telegraph handed you a Telegraph poll.
A Telegraph poll, yes,
it's a large room you're in, isn't it?
Yeah. Very large. In fact, it's not that large, it's just very tall. But 44% apparently support no deal. So that's where we are. I mean, you have to take every poll as basically not credible in this particular environment. But yeah. Liberal Zardos, if it really came down to it, would you swallow May's Brexit or have no Brexit? I wouldn't. I would rather have no Brexit because at least then we maintain a vote in the European Parliament. Indeed. So I would rather no deal Brexit, followed by Remain, followed by nothing, because nothing would convince me to vote for May's deal. What do I have against the Polish? I don't have anything against the Polish Vulcan. I don't know what's going on.
Perhaps you were talking about Polish on some other stream.
Oh, you can't trust the Poles. That's what I was saying.
Oh,
yeah. So that's it.
Very good.
Some of my best friends are Poles. So there we go.
So what you mean to say is you have more than one Telegraph poll in that particular room you're in?
I mean, that's very sexually provocative, Britisher. I don't want to. I don't want to claim it. Don't talk to me about that. What do we make though of I mean, presuming that the Britishers' prediction comes true, or mine, do you have a prediction, Tail, that's different to ours at all?
What are your predictions again?
Britishers it's going to be delayed. Me was we enter indefinite holding period.
Oh, right.
No, may I just ask, what is the difference between indefinite holding period and delay?
That's where the delay might have an end.
Yes, basically.
And yeah, not indefinite delay.
Well, no, I mean, I say it's going to be delayed until end of June.
Okay, yeah, I'm kind of with the Britisher on this one. I think it will be a delay, and it will, or at least a delay that they claim to be until a certain point, by which point they'll do another delay, so then we'll become into this kind of permanent.
Well, put it like this. My thinking is this: the European Parliament takes its seats in July. So I know that I believe the vote would be in May or something like that, or it could even be before that. I'm not sure, but they don't take their seats before then. So if we basically were to stay in after June, it would cause a constitutional crisis within the EU because we would then be members without representation within there. So if they basically delay it until the end of June, that is pretty much as far back as they can delay it. And you just cannot see how May can come to any kind of conclusion. Because no matter which way she turns, she loses. She can't go towards the Brexiteers. She can't go away from the Brexiteers, if you know what I mean.
I don't know why she can't just suck it up and actually just hold a position that the electorate voted for. Like, go towards the Brexiteers. It's like people talking about, like, there's so many people going like, oh, you can't appease the Brexiteers, and it's like, why the fuck not? Like, that's
the parliamentary majority is just not there. That's the problem.
It drives me insane.
Parliament is not reflective in its current composition of the Brexit result.
And they should suck it up and accept what the British public voted for and fucking resign. Like, or if they've compromised, like, you wouldn't have a judge.
So when exactly are you going to have this debate with Anna Soubry?
You wouldn't. Yeah, exactly. You wouldn't have this. You wouldn't have a judge who was compromised with a conflict of interest adjudicating a case which they had a stake in. And in the same way, I wouldn't have politicians.
It is the simple problem of having a parliament that is sovereign, which then abrogates its responsibility in a one-off vote.
Oh, yeah.
To a referendum, and then has to somehow try and square that with its own sovereignty. That's, at the heart of it, that's the problem.
There are a lot of very angry people about this. And
you don't say.
And yeah, but I think, like, even people on both sides, like, including, like, the Leave side, like, underestimate absolutely how rancidly full of rage an awful lot of people, particularly in really deprived areas, who voted out, for instance, like, particularly like people I've been on the phone, for instance, like I have a second job where I talk to at the moment I'm doing a job where we're talking to recipients of Welsh I guess, like, income support and employment support and employability, receiving employability skills courses, that sort of thing. And the number of people that we get on the phone there who are rabidly Leave voters, who are frustrated that, like, they've been suffering under a Labour government for a start, but they've also got the issues with, like, what they see.
Quite a few of them will have voted Labour.
Oh, probably. Like, I doubt it. I have no doubt. But it's like there's this huge disconnect between, like, they see the EU as responsible, like, rightly or wrongly, they see the EU as responsible for things like the destruction of some of the manufacturing industries and the fishing industries in Wales. And they are so angry. Like, I've had people screaming blue murder down the phone at me about why, like, it doesn't matter that I'm not a government representative, right? Like, they've screamed down the phone at me about why nothing's being done, because they're so frustrated by this whole thing.
It's more than likely down to your person, because you are very easy to blame.
Thank you very much. I sound like one of the Tories, so why not? But you get this sort of thing, and I go, like, people scoff at me when I say, like, I'll bandy around terms like, I mean, I wouldn't go as far as say civil war at this point, but certainly civil unrest, potentially riots.
Yes,
that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I just think it's almost inevitability that it's just sitting there while people are turning their noses up in kind of like blissful ignorance of the fact that nothing's really changed yet, and a lot of the I suppose preparations that are having to be made for Brexit and that sort of thing happen to be coming from places like Calais, right? So, like, places on the continent rather than over here, because even businesses that are having to make adjustments are typically international and make kind of like these kinds of adjustments all the time based on changing policy. And you've also got the universities who receive a lot of international students making their adjustments, and they're probably the only place where I would say they're making more noise about it, right? Like how Brexit is going to affect things. But it's just like the majority of people are not affected as of yet. Nothing has happened, and they basically just sit there and watch as the fire slowly grows larger. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Have I said something profound that just no one's disagreeing with? Okay,
very much.
Well, yes, I mean it's just, I mean, some people are talking about Theresa May possibly just running down the clock because it's getting closer and closer and closer and closer. Meanwhile, you just look at it and you just go, well, what actual negotiation options are there? And it seems to be fairly thin on the ground. and therefore you kind of look at it and you just go, okay, you can make a delay. Well, they can't even delay it. That's just it. All they can do is request a delay. Whether the EU then wants to give them a delay is another issue.
Yeah, and that is so wrong, like on every single level in terms of like an uneven playing field.
I mean, the EU in this case is the negotiation partner. I mean, we agreed to leave on that particular day. We now suddenly say, well, actually, no, we would like to be a member of your single market, yada, 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 for a little bit longer. Then, this is something they have to agree to.
Okay, you make a fair point.
But the EU has kind of said, they don't really see a problem of there being a delay if there's a purpose to it.
Yeah.
And that's just it. I mean, where do her options change? I mean, always consider that the EU will be looking at it from the perspective of, we negotiated and we reached agreement with the British government. The British government, i.e. Theresa May, was then unable to deliver Parliament. So Parliament would simply not back it. Now, the EU is kind of looking at the situation as, even if we make another agreement with you, even if we were to change something, how do we know that you could then bring Parliament along? So the EU will basically also be looking at this, because they don't just want this strung out at infinitum. And therefore they will want some sort of decision reached. And I can't see how, Theresa May being Prime Minister for a few months longer really serves anyone any purpose.
Especially not Theresa May.
Well, I'm going to lighten the mood with a couple of super chats then. So that Indian dude has donated $5 saying, taking polls, a favourite amongst political analysts and the gay community. And Salad Fork with another $5 Canadian saying, to hell with Europe. I say we reform the empire, and if that causes economic problems, we can just go beat up some African nerds for their lunch money. What do you think of that Britisher in particular?
No comment.
No comment? I mean, where's your British spirit, man? Do you think you are, Flashman? And also, I like that people are like, what are we going to fight?
That Flashman was hiding under the bed most of the time.
Exactly. That's what I'm calling you right now. There's people going, what are we going to fight the Civil War with? Spoons? It's just like sporks. The prepared have sporks.
Just throwing haggis.
If we don't,
talking of about which, did you hear the Asda announcement?
No. Oh, they're not going to.
Wait for it. They will now not be selling single knives.
Oh, for goodness sake! No kitchen knives in a single pack.
Single knives. So you can still buy a set of kitchen knives. You just can't buy a single kitchen knife. So as of the end of April, Asda is taking the fateful step, at a great sacrifice to itself, of no longer putting on sale any single knives with which people would be able to stab each other.
Basically,
it isn't as if the people had any kitchen knives at home.
No,
to start with, be able to pick up.
No, and it's like they will single-handedly take the bold step of putting retailers for specialty kitchen knives like Hell's Kitchen out of business. That's just the only thing that happens is business suffers with that. So disturbing.
But I mean, it got mentioned on every single major news outlet. So there you go. Mission accomplished.
Oh dear.
If you remember, they basically copied the same thing that basically the Germans did. That their supermarkets basically announced that they were no longer going to be selling single knives after there had been a few stabbing incidents.
Oh, of course.
Wasn't there some chap who basically, he didn't even buy the knife. He just went in there and somehow got it out of the packet and then started stabbing people with it.
Yeah, because as if people who are, really, really, really determined to stab somebody will go, tell you what, I can't buy this knife. Oh, well, I'll just put my killing rage behind me and just not bother.
Well, I mean, now it would more than likely be easier for you if you think of it, because if it's in one of those kind of, hermetically sealed, vacuum-packed plastic things, you need pretty much some kind of, acetylene torch to get at it.
Yeah, so we can't open the knives anymore, therefore.
Whereas now, it will be in one of those handy knife block box sets. So you can just open the box. So it's more likely actually easier to get at the knives if they only sell the boxes.
Unless they only sell knives in those packs, in which case we'll never be able to open them because we have no knives with which to open.
True, yes, but then you would have to sell single knives, which they're now refusing to do at Asda.
Or just sell a multi-pack of them, but in that same kind of pack.
Yes.
Riveting conversation.
Well, on that note, it's just, oh dear. What were we talking about before we got onto the project of? Oh yes, the civil war with sporks. Yeah, if we don't get, let me see, like sporks for freedom or something like that. Sporks for victory, the Harry Channel says. Like if we don't have sporks for victory as a hashtag.
Sorry, may I just be the complete naive entity here and ask what on earth are sporks? Can someone fill me in here?
It's a spoon with a fork, like prongs at the end of it.
With you.
They're very short prongs, and they're usually made of plastic and come free with a
pasta or something.
Okay, yes,
yeah.
I'm now up to speed. Please continue.
I believe, like, my brother actually got a metal. I can't remember what they called it. Like, I think he bought something like 6 packs of Chicago Town frozen pizzas, and they sent him a quote free like spork, but with a knife edge on it as well.
Well, he must have been delighted.
He was, but I just think like he could never use it because, funnily enough, having a spoon with a razor sharp edge isn't very conducive to eating anything.
Well, I saw someone use one of them for hollowing out a kiwi fruit.
A what? Oh right.
Yeah.
Oh, so this is a specialist kiwi fruit out hollower.
I'm loving the comments about
there's a tool for everything these days.
I'm remover.
I'm loving the comments about like the Asda ban, like Rubber going, "Oh, I won't go on a knife crime spree now that I can't buy a knife singly." Let's not call them knives. Let's call them slice facilitators and sell them around the regulations. Tactical spoon, spork life, hashtag spork life. Knives don't kill people, sporks do. You Sporkian fool, tremble before the might of my egg whisk. It's just like that. This is gold. That's fantastic. We need memes of this. If anyone is capable of creating memes, tweet them at me. And that's just fantastic. You can take our knives, but you'll never take our sporks. We need a Swiss Army spork. This is just for getting the stones out of horses' hooves, officer. Yes.
Yeah, you obviously have you've got a musket with a spork on the end instead of a bayonet.
Yes, spork bayonet. Fantastic. Can you carve someone's liver out with a rusty spork? Can you carve someone's liver out with a rusty spork? Yes, you can, but the difficulty is finding one because they're mainly plastic.
And maintaining your Twitter account if you do so.
Oh, yes. As a certain academic agent once discovered. Very, yes, I got the Alan Rickman reference coming in from chat there. Like, I'll cut your heart out with a spork. Alan Rickman as the Sheriff of Nottingham. Replace all swords in films with CGI sporks so as not to promote violence. The future of cutlery, sporks. And yes, the spork bayonet, practical and deadly. You can eat your pot noodle and stab the enemy to death with it.
But if you had a spork bayonet, would the Germans summarily shoot you or not?
Are you assuming that we would be at war with the Germans, Britisher?
Well, you see, the Germans had a thing about serrated bayonets.
Did they?
Yeah, I believe.
Go full Lindy Beige on me here.
Was it the Royal Engineers? I'm not sure. So basically, they had serrated bayonets in order to be able to saw things with them. And the Germans had, they took against that. They saw that as a kind of how should we say, sort of ungentlemanly weapon, if you know what I mean. This was too barbaric to stick a serrated bayonet into somebody, and therefore they just basically let it be known this was First World War stuff.
In that case,
should they capture anybody with a serrated bayonet, he would be summarily shot.
Well, in that case, a spork is merely a serrated spoon, kill on sight. You know.
Well, there you go. So the serrated spoon, yes.
What was the Romans' take on sporks?
Come on, Brisha. You're unusually quiet.
Well, I could even imagine that there might have been such a thing as a spork, because I do remember seeing some kits whereby they did seem to have kind of mobile sets, you know, sort of that were kind of hinged at the back, whereby it could be, you know, knives, forks, spoons, things like that. So I could well imagine there might even have been a Roman spork for some, you know, for some adventuring general who basically could put his silversmith to some good work.
Oh dear.
I mean, you did press me on it, so you know, don't blame me for boring you.
I'm not. You're not boring us, Britisher. You're providing your crucial political analysis as always.
There did seem to be some such thing as like a sort of a Swiss Army, utensil tool for cutlery, if you know what I mean.
I think we're going to get to the point where we just all have state-issued corks on all sharp edges.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, was there not a judge that came out and said, you know, to ban sharp edges on things?
Yes, it should be. They should be ground down. Yes,
all the doors must be beveled. You know, it's like you can't have it.
Just wrap everybody in.
Well, I mean, can you imagine the industry will have in turning all sharp rocks into smooth pebbles?
Yes, and turning all lathes.
Well, I mean, you know, Jeremy Corbyn would like it. It's very high on the job creations list. That.
Yes, of course. It'll only be racists who do it, and they'll be in certain work camps with pickaxes.
There'll be hordes of tens of thousands of municipal workers with sandpaper. You know, rounding down the corners of the curbstones.
I was going to say even worse. I was going to say it's like instead of pickaxes like they had in the gulags, they're going to have you just have a spade that you smack repeatedly against the edges of the stones to bash them flat, because you can't be efficient enough to have sandpaper. You understand? The it's like Sporkius Maximus here. Samuel Kappa has donated £2. Thank you very much, sir. And says, what do you think of James O'Brien's argument of naming laws that the EU has made, what sovereignty has been lost, and how it would affect immigration? I mean, I think the real effects of Brexit, which are not to be, have not been measured properly, that have been mainly speculation on all sides, as opposed to like from the boundless possibility and prosperity to the absolute doom and gloom of super gonorrhea infested pugs. There's a fantastic humor-based video on British's channel for that, if you're interested, by the way. And basically, like the idea of people not understanding what the EU controls and what it doesn't on a day-to-day basis. People don't know what EU laws provide and what they don't, which has led the Remain side to basically claim that anything good in our country has only came from the EU. It's led to the Leave side to claim that everything bad in our country has only come from the EU, and basically leads to a lot of misinformation. So I'm in favour of naming laws the EU has made.
Well, isn't that Mr. O'Brien or O'Brien or however his name is pronounced? Isn't he the chap who was on LBC basically saying if you walk away from a negotiation, you end up where you were? So
that was the stupidest. That was the stupidest.
It was a sort of underhand way of saying that if we walk away from the negotiation, we ought to remain in the EU.
It was the stupidest fucking statement I've ever heard in my entire life, because the EU is not like walking into a negotiation between a shopkeeper and a customer. It is between a negotiation between a subscription service holder and a subscription service, which won't stop taking money out your bank account. That's what it is.
Well, the crucial thing that he omitted to include in his example was that, of course, if you are negotiating with a third party in the way he suggests, then the decision has not been made. So if you go to negotiate about the purchase of a car and you end up not liking the price, yes, you walk away without a car. That's true. But in this particular case, the decision has actually already been reached.
Mm.
The negotiation is merely about how to implement the decision.
Yeah. I can't stand this James chap.
Yeah,
all Jameses.
Yeah, you say he was on LBC. Is he not actually a host on LBC rather than just a guest?
I wouldn't know, honestly.
All I know is I tweeted about it at some point, although I have received something like 100 tweets since then because someone decided to put a meme on my channel.
How dare they?
There's towards a grand unification.
No more memes.
No, send all the memes. No, I'm talking about.
He's very irritated about it.
There's this guy.
Whatever you do, no more memes.
There's this guy called Lord Pterodax, and whenever he wants to say something, he tags me in his post, which is great. He provides a great amount of stuff. But he did this one which was remarkably popular, and of course, if you're tagged in the tweet, any replies and any likes that happened on any of the replies come through to your Twitter feed. And I got a message from Twitter going, "You've got over 99 notifications. You might want to filter some of these out." I was like, "Oh, thank you very much."
You can. It doesn't always work, but you can actually ask to be dropped from the conversation. You can it is in the menu that you can basically just ask for.
Yeah, but I don't want to miss anything exciting. Someone's just tweeted this at me though, which says towards a grand unification of cutlery towards the splade, which is a knife and a fork fused together is a nork. A knife and a spoon is a spife. A fork and a spoon is a spork. And if you put them all together, you get a splade. So it's kind of like a shovel-shaped fork with a knife edge. There you go.
Vicious.
Which is used to depulp kiwi fruit, as we, I think, have established.
Obviously, there is no greater calling on this earth than to depulp kiwi fruit. There you go.
Well, it appears to be one of the great engineering challenges of our time.
Liberal Zardos has donated £2 and says budget Borg egg whisk for one hand and a spatula. Smiley face. I think you're lacking in the defensive capability there. We need what's going to be our defensive choice.
When you're always talking about the egg whisk, my mind goes in a completely different direction. I'm always thinking of the flying helmet, the goggles, and the wet celery.
Gross. What?
Hello.
Oh, I've not watched Hello in many years.
Well, you see the waitresses at René's Cafe often, how should we say, render services to the German officer gentlemen.
Oh dear.
And their particular kinks, their particular interests always tend to circle around an egg whisk, the flying helmet, and the wet celery.
Of course, it makes perfect sense. Samuel Capper donating £2 saying, I agree about James. He is a bad cunt. But I was like, how do I say this politely? I'm not going to. My friend has a theory that this is just all Jameses. I'm sorry that if your name happens to be James and you're watching this particular broadcast, but turns out you're an asshole, and it's all thanks to your parents. So you need to go and blame them right now for calling you James. It set you down a self-fulfilling prophecy road that you cannot recover from. The Mad Mercenary has donated $5 and says, tell AA and the Deep Law that I just got banned from Discord for no reason. Discord have not given me a reason why, so tell the boys to be careful. I will inquire. Don't worry, mate, and I'll see what's going on. If there's anything we can fix, we will. But if not, then I'll tell them to be careful, I suppose. If you need to get in touch with me, just drop me a tweet on Facebook. Drop me a tweet, and I'll message you privately later. Polyfant has donated €5 and says, from the Irish perspective, we are so tired of Brexit too. Just read an article about how Ireland should abandon England after Brexit. I've seen a lot about reunification coming up with Ireland recently. Have you guys seen anything like that?
Oh, absolutely no problem with that. Ireland can reunify with the United Kingdom anytime they please.
Yep, Ireland is British clay.
Well, ask anybody interested in geography. The British Isles. I rest my case.
And there we go. Fantastic. Have we got any, I don't know if there's anything more we can really say on Brexit. I'm so bored of it at this point. I'm kind of sick. Do either of you have any interesting news from the week that you would like to discuss? Because I'm sick to death.
Well, I think one of the problems with this is that we're in danger of jumping the gun, because it's the next 2 days which are going to be of great interest when it comes to Brexit, because the parliamentary votes and whatnot are going to be happening then. So we will be a great deal wiser by late Wednesday or Thursday. But right now, we are kind of right at the cusp of it.
Yeah. I don't see how this is going to end well. Let me put it that way. It's either going to be a farce or it's going to be a bloodbath. That's my final note on it.
Or a farce or a bloodbath.
A farce or a bloodbath. That's Brexit. I might rename this stream, actually. Fake Accents Unite. A farce or a bloodbath. Seeing as I'm already demonetized, why not? There we go. Anyone else have anything interesting to talk about?
Well, you guys won't find this particularly interesting, but it's something that annoyed me more than it should have. But I was just kind of, looking through my timeline on Twitter, and then this tweet in Bulgarian, Scottish Gaelic, comes up, and it was basically someone asking what would the translation of patriarchy be in Gaelic.
Right.
And so I looked into this person, and yet she's writing a master's thesis on feminism, but in Gaelic.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And I was properly triggered.
The idea that someone would do.
So what you did is you looked up the Esperanto for patriarchy and sent her that.
Well, interestingly, the reason that it was brought to my attention was because I follow this this account, which is Scottish Gaelic 4, and then because it usually just retweets quite silly things and goes, well, the Scots Gaelic for such and such is this, and it's usually something quite contrived and it's just quite funny. This one was them actually retweeting this and putting how they would translate the word patriarchy into Gaelic. So I thought, please this be a joke. And then when I clicked on it, nope, it's someone actually writing their master's thesis.
Well, I would just sort of like to point out to you, you are familiar with the present nature of Scottish politics.
Absolutely, yeah. But I thought there were that few people that spoke Gaelic that maybe hadn't quite been, well, I was maybe a bit naive in that, to be fair. But that's more reason for me to learn it properly, so I can be a dissenting voice, but in Gaelic.
Don't worry. When you actually get to the discussion, the moderator will tell you that that's not actually what you're here to discuss.
Indeed.
As we found out from your hate crime tribunal or whatever it was.
Exactly. So now we can talk about the patriarchy in languages that don't even matter.
Here's something.
Oh, hang on. You said that, not me.
I did say that. Yeah. I'm just preempting the chat and also you guys. So
I tell you what though, Staff Sergeant Sniper wants to talk about the executive order on free speech at colleges, from our US friends with was it Donald Trump mandating that you can't suppress speech on campus or something
Well,
like that?
he hasn't mandated it yet. He has announced that he will mandate it.
Oh, I see. Or have we merely received the announcement that he will announce to mandate it? So,
well, I think it was CPAC, so it's basically some conservative, conference. And in it, he basically announced that he will be making some kind of what is it? Executive order. He will be issuing a executive order, but he kind of said that he will be doing so shortly. So there is some kind of preparation involved, if you know what I mean, and that it will require colleges who wish to have federal research grants to basically support free speech. But that's wherein lies the problem, because ask any British politician whether they support free speech.
of course they do.
Of course they do, precisely. So,
but of course it comes with limits.
Do you think you'll be able to find a American college that doesn't support free speech? And that's where the problem is. That's the nitty gritty. That's what matters. Because as such, I would be in complete support of this. But it very much depends on how is this defined. Who decides this? Because think of it. If it's the colleges who basically identify themselves in this regard, they will all identify themselves as supporting free speech.
Yeah.
If it is left to the individual states, then I mean you can imagine what California will decide and the state of New York. So, therefore, if it's the federal government, how is that decided by the federal government? I mean, do they do inspections? How does this, how do they actually work that out? And that's where I see the actual problems with this policy. As such, I'm all for it, but it boils down to how do you actually implement such a thing?
I have just been linked in reference to a prior conversation, Patricia. Thank you for your comments, by the way. They were great. This particular meme, which says sporks need an immediate ban, and it's this.
Well, I think what he's trying to say is just to be safe, all forks and spoons should be banned with it, just in order to make sure that none of them are sporks.
Indeed. I believe here we have Yaka Shinobi fighting against the Spork Brigade. In that classic warfare sentiment. But yeah, thank you for that, Ariane. I appreciate that. We've also been talking about this kind of like the ongoing feud between UKIP and Farage, which again,
there is an ongoing feud. Please do enlighten me.
Do you not aware?
I mean, I know that UKIP feel somewhat bitter and are sniping, but I'm not specifically aware of there being sort of feuding. So I'm assuming this is based on some particularly salty exchanges or something of that sort.
I mean, like there's been a talk about like his Brexit party, basically, and the fact that his new Brexit party officially has more MEPs now than UKIP does, which is not. It just
didn't take him long, did it?
Which is not to say that that's many, because it's only 8. So
but that means that since he has founded it, 8 people have basically left various other entities and joined his outfit.
Yes, including Paul Nuttall, who obviously already previously ran UKIP before Batten took over. And
yeah, if you lose one of your leaders, your ex-leaders, that is a bit of a blow. Yes, I mean, I think it would be seen as significant if, someone like Tony Blair would suddenly join the Liberal Democrats or the Tories, if you know what I mean.
Like, yeah, I mean, take this all with a pinch of salt, right? Because there's a funny thing about like the fact that this hasn't been in the main media. So I'm seeing a lot of stuff like Guido Fawkes and so on.
I mean, have we actually heard any further information regarding what his membership numbers are, because he claimed to have 100,000 in the first week.
On the mailing list, certainly.
Well, this was just it. It was reported as he reports 100,000 members. Now, you were the one who then basically told me they haven't even got the payment facility up and running yet. So how on earth would they be members? And of course, if he were to have had 100,000 in the first week, I mean, what would we be expecting in the first month? Because, I mean, you would still, expect the avalanche to continue just at a lesser rate. So by now, surely he must have passed 500,000.
I have no idea.
Unless, of course, that 100,000 figure was, as you suspected all along, wasn't really up to much. But I don't think he would have gone quite that far out of his way if the numbers wouldn't have been substantial. I'll grant him that much.
Breaking news, by the way, just again to depart from this, like just after you've given an interesting comment, Britisher. I'm sorry, it's not intentional. The Prime Minister has just submitted
to the EU. Yes,
basically. Well, I mean, she's been doing that for fucking months. The Prime Minister has secured legally binding changes to her Brexit deal a day ahead of the MPs' vote on it. David Lidington told the Commons the changes strengthen and improve, in quote marks, the withdrawal agreement that will see the UK leave the EU, as well as its future relationship with the bloc. But he said negotiations were still taking place over further measures.
Well, I am very, very cynical about this.
I'm cynical about the changes, but the term legally binding also
because I just don't see how that's supposed to work. Because the basic problem is that the two positions cannot be brought together. But basically, they need the they need the backstop to be open-ended. Because otherwise Britain can walk away from it, and that in a way makes a mockery of the whole the whole idea of the backstop. Meanwhile, Britain needs there to be a clear indication that it's not open-ended, which basically means they have to have a way of getting out of it. Now, how exactly do you create a legally binding way that pleases both of them? So at one moment, it needs to be finite. At the next moment, it needs to be precisely the opposite.
Yeah, I don't know. There's no way they can win, is there? That's just the main thing that I'm getting from this.
Well, I mean, it's when it comes to this whole backstop arrangement thing, it's a cul-de-sac she should never have entered into. But yes, once you're there, the European Union is seeking to protect particularly the relationship with Ireland, because they realize that Ireland are kind of, a little island in the middle of the Atlantic, cut off by Britain, that is supposed to be a member of the EU. And therefore they're desperate. The Irish, I think, feel quite desperate at the moment because their entire economy is heavily dependent on ours. And therefore they are looking for some kind of protection from the EU. And in a way, the whole backstop thing is an attempt to protect them. So how on earth can the EU kind of waver from that position, but then at the same time, the mistrust on the British side is entirely justified, because it basically says, look, folks, you can keep us in the backstop indefinitely if you want to, and there's no way we can get out of it in this present arrangement. So how that is supposed to, how that sort of circle is supposed to be squared, I just don't understand. And how one is supposed to come up with some kind of legally binding solution to that is just beyond me. And therefore, I can't help but feel that this is the sort of thing where, David Cameron goes to Europe and he comes back and announces that now we can have the referendum because Europe has now agreed to significant reform, which we all knew was complete bump.
Yeah.
I've got the feeling that these legally binding changes will be the same thing, the same sort of nothing that David Cameron came back with, if you know what I mean. One has to show something because tomorrow one has a vote.
Mm. Well, on that slightly depressing note, I think we're going to round off. I do have some memes to share with us before the end, in particular of note to the Britisher, who is going to love this. So first of all, we have London needs you alive. Don't carry a whisk. Which is obviously phenomenal. And then we have an attempt at a steampunk Britisher. What do you make of this?
Yes.
Well, what can I say? If only I could grow mustachios quite that manly. But dare I ask, what on earth is that sort of, what is going on with those goggles?
Well, that's part of the... I mean, do you know anything about steampunk Britisher?
No.
Yes, you do some research and then you'll understand.
Absolutely.
Did you expect me to?
Yes. I thought you might.
So, yeah, I'm just wondering how the goggles and the monocle go together.
You remove one and you pop them. The monocle is on a string, after all. It can be moved away.
Well, I will settle for the mustachios. But yeah,
and
the goggles.
Magnificent gold brooch that you on your sash there. Marvelous, a fantastic job.
Yes, that definitely seems something that is more sort of aimed at the feminine market. That particular brooch you point out.
A bit of extra flair for your uniform, Britisher. Fantastic attempt, Grand Duke of Middlesex.
I think you should have a moustache in your avatar, regardless.
Yes, I think it would be fantastic. It's not to mention the fact that the monocle has become a gear cog, by the way. In that particular image.
Yes, that was a nice touch.
It's just fantastic. Your first mistake was assuming steampunk made any sense, Britisher, says Dominic. That sort of thing. Okay. Well, on that note, thank you very, very much for coming, everybody, and thank you very much to my guests. Thank you very much for coming, Tailed.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
And thank you very much, Britisher.
And I'm still just hanging on in there.
You keep on hanging on in there, baby. Take care, and good night.
See you about.
Cheerio.